Alright guys, welcome back to a brand new DC Studios News Roundup video, and we've got quite a bit to go through today, starting off actually here with James Gunn talking about New York Comic Con. Now, a lot of people have been wondering about what we could see out of this, and it might not be as much as what people have been hoping for, but we're gonna have to wait and see because we have got several teasers to go through in this video, so definitely stick around, stay up to date with everything. But James Gunn said over on Twitter, 19th of October at New York Comic Con, join me, Frank Grillo, David Harbour, Zoe Chow, Sean Gunn, Dean Laurie, and Steve Agee for the Creature Commandos panel, and we'll fill you in on all of the details of our monster army and the seeds of the DCU. Now, the last bit there has me pretty intrigued. I don't want to go too far ahead of myself because technically Creature Commandos can be seen as the seeds of the DCU since it is the first project. We know, I believe it was in an Entertainment Weekly interview with James Gunn that he said there will be like seeds kind of or references setting up the larger DCU as well. So obviously it's going to be very Creature Commandos in Creature Commandos, but it's going to also be quite fascinating to see what they can plant in there and possibly hint at what could be happening in Superman and just larger world building stuff. So just to kind of set some expectations here, I do think it will be quite uniquely about Creature Commandos. Who knows, at the panel we might get a teaser or two, but for those of you who are expecting, I don't know, casting announcements for Lanterns or something like that, I don't know if that will go down there. I expect that to maybe be like a major trade article that we'll be covering in another video at some point in time. However, at New York Comic Con as well, we will be getting a Penguin panel, which will include an extended sneak peek of episode 5 of the forthcoming HBO series, in addition to a bit of a mid-season discussion. So I'm looking forward to that because I've seen up to episode 4, as you guys should know by now. And so yeah, I haven't seen episode 5, so it's going to be quite cool. Not only us talking about that and speculating about what could happen later on in the series, episode 5, episode 6, but there's going to be a bit of a mid-season discussion with Colin Farrell, several other cast members, including the showrunner, Lauren LaFranc. But going back to what I was just saying in the DCU, New York Comic Con aside here, and talking about Lanterns, we did have just around 22 hours ago, as of when making this video, Gunn posted over on Threads just simply an image of Jon Stewart. Now, this is interesting because this guy's the co-CEO of DC Studios. We know that Lanterns is casting right now. We've been over that quite a bit, and I've got quite a bit of news to catch up on here. But before I get into the casting of Hal Jordan, I am wondering what this means. Does this mean that behind the scenes that they've kind of basically tapped their and found their Jon Stewart? But then would that make so much sense if they haven't, as far as we know, found their Hal Jordan as of right now? But then again, just because it's not out there in the news, for all we know behind closed doors, they may have found their Hal Jordan, and that's why he's teasing this image of Jon Stewart being like, oh, maybe we found our Jon Stewart. And the reason why I'm kind of getting into all of that is because, you know, a lot of people were thinking they would want to find their Hal Jordan first, and then that way, you know, they can do kind of readings and chemistry tests between whoever's cast as Hal and whoever will be up in the running and auditioning for Jon Stewart. But I could be completely wrong there. I don't know what this could really mean, but I just don't think he would be like, oh yeah, Jon Stewart, I'm just excited for Lanterns. Maybe it is that simple, but I don't know. Considering casting is going on right now, could this mean something more, and that they kind of know who they want for Jon Stewart? And I know there's a lot of names out there that people are hoping to see land the role. But going back to Hal Jordan here, this is something I didn't cover because I was away last week, even though I pre-recorded a few videos. One of them was a DCU discussion series video, and in that video I did say I don't know if Josh Brolin has accepted the role or has turned it down at that point. And it turned out when I had uploaded that video, well, as per DC Film News here, quoting The Hollywood Reporter, Josh Brolin has turned down the role of Hal Jordan for DC Studios' Lanterns. The offer was exclusively first reported by Nexus Point News on September 2nd, so they got the scoop there. And it just goes to prove why I've been using Nexus Point News in various videos for sources of news updates from time to time. Sure, they've not got every single thing right, but I would say that they are an outlet that you can kind of trust. Obviously take reports with a grain of salt, but the fact that The Hollywood Reporter came out with this article and they basically confirmed that Josh Brolin will not be wearing the Lantern ring after all, as it says here, and that he did have an offer, but he passed on it, means that, well, Nexus Point News were in the know from the get-go. It's just that, well, I guess he doesn't want to be Hal Jordan. But that's not the only thing that this article says. So let's go through it initially here. Brolin was eyed to play Hal Jordan, the cocky Green Lantern hero previously played by Ryan Reynolds in the ill-fated 2011 Green Lantern movie. According to multiple sources, the actor received an offer at the end of August, but by the end of this past weekend, his mind was made up. No other details were available. But this is the interesting thing. They go on to say, well, like they're in the middle of hiring directors, and there's some news about that as well right now in terms of who could actually be directing various episodes of Lanterns. They say that the internet was abuzz at the prospect of Brolin playing Jordan, although he was never a sure thing. Speculation also arose around several other A-listers, but it's unclear how valid those rumors are. Matthew McConaughey, for example, will not be donning the ring, according to their sources. So Brolin is out, Matthew McConaughey is out, and we have Apocalyptic Horseman here over on Twitter, who is a part of Nexus Point News and, you know, was breaking the story about Josh Brolin being offered the role of Hal Jordan. He's also said that it's not Ewan McGregor either. Now, for those of you who don't know, we had, well, Josh Brolin, Matthew McConaughey, Chris Pine, Ewan McGregor, and Timothy Olyphant here in the front runners for Hal Jordan. So now we're just down to, I believe, Chris Pine and Timothy Olyphant, I guess. And I would love to know how you guys feel about this. I think most people are happy about Josh Brolin turning down the role here. Believe it or not, I've got an unpopular take here. Out of all of the front runners, Ewan McGregor, Chris Pine, Matthew McConaughey, Timothy Olyphant, I was still kind of like, I don't know why Josh Brolin did sink in my head. Like, everyone here, other than Chris Pine, is basically in their 50s, and even though, don't get me wrong, I totally understand how Josh Brolin is quite a subversion of an expectation for a Hal Jordan casting, I was like, you know what? In this true detective, you know, murder in the American heartland showing where Hal and Jon Stewart uncover this ancient, terrifying mystery, I could easily imagine him bringing that gravitas and severity in a worn, seasoned, veteran Hal Jordan Lantern legend of the DCU. But don't get me wrong, I could see it in the other actors as well. I could still see it in Ewan. I can still see it in Chris Pine, but I don't know where I'm landing with this now. I guess it still needs to be confirmed if Chris Pine, just like how Matthew McConaughey, according to sources, isn't actually in the running, is actually Chris Pine, is Timothy Olyphant. We still don't really know. But that is where we're at for now. So let me know who you would want it to be out of Timothy Olyphant or Chris Pine. I've got a feeling a lot of people will say Chris Pine. I am kind of split between them. And for all I know, knowing my luck, by the time I post this video, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an article being like, Hal Jordan cast in Lanterns, and Jon Stewart is next. But we're gonna have to wait and see. But again, it could be any day now, any week now, we hear something about this. Up next, ladies and gentlemen, we need to turn our attention back to Superman, because we've had some cast or crew wrap gifts being sent out, and one of them is a mug featuring the characters in the movie from, well, basically, well, most people. Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, so we get a look at him, and surprise, surprise, he looks like Metamorpho, but he is wearing some shorts there. Normally, I see Metamorpho with kind of like Y-front, you know, like Superman kind of pants, if you will, but here they seem to be actual kind of trunky. That I can't really see any M. I do want to stress that these are just kind of cool little cast crew artwork things printed onto a mug, but it's still interesting being like, okay, well, technically this is our first look at Metamorpho. You can see that the engineer is featured in her black suit, as we saw in set photos, so the question is now, so actually is she not going to get a chrome metallic-y kind of look as she has in the comics, is what people are wondering, but still, it could be done in such a way in the movie and where she wears this, but they still manage to CGI something over it, so this is a bit of an undersuit, if you will, because in the comics, she's basically naked, and when she puts the liquid nanites over her body, well, obviously that kind of puts a piece of clothing on her, if you will. So I wonder if that's really the way they're tackling it. So I wouldn't jump to conclusions with the fact that we're seeing the engineer in a black suit here. We have Jimmy Olsen looking very Jimmy Olsen-like. Now, Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner, something I want to say here, are still wearing their Lord Tech suits. Now, this can be seen of one or two ways, because you could argue, well, they could still get a second suit in the movie because, you know, they might just not want to give that away because there might be a situation like this where a crew member posts the crew gift, wrap gift, and they don't want the second suit getting out. Or it could be like how I've been speculating, and I'm not guaranteeing this, and I'm not even saying that I fully believe this, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised, genuinely, if the Lord Tech suits that Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl are wearing, as well as Mr. Terrific, but his is very accurate to his character anyway in the comics, are the suits that they're going to be wearing throughout the whole duration of the film. And I feel like this matches up with what Isabella Merced said in that interview, in where she was asked about the suit. She was like gassing it up. She loves the helmet, but she also said that, and I'm paraphrasing here, the suit in the film is reflective of where they're currently at, or where her character is at in the current timeline of the DCU. And I always took that to mean like, okay, yeah, sure, this isn't necessarily a super comic accurate suit for Hawkgirl, but that is because it's reflective of where she's at, because she's a part of this Lord Tech team with Mr. Terrific and Guy Gardner. But that doesn't mean at a different point in the timeline of the DCU, aka the future, that she wouldn't be getting a more comic book accurate suit. But that doesn't mean you are going to see that second suit in this movie. So I would love to know what you think of that. Do you think that this is going to be like her Lord Tech suit is what she's going to wear throughout the film? Do you take that interview comment that she said about how well the suit is reflective of where she's at in the DCU right now to kind of back that up even more? But also, we can't ignore here that we can actually see her Hawkgirl wings on the suit here, because obviously we've seen set photos of her, but she wasn't actually wearing wings. She was in the air in a harness, but they will be CGI'd on. Again, this artwork isn't super insanely detailed, but it is cool to kind of get a little bit of a glimpse at what her wings could look like. Obviously, we have Superman there, the Clark Kent look that we've seen before, Lex Luthor in a suit, kind of technically our first proper look at Lex Luthor, but why did I say proper? Because it's not a proper look, but that is what Lex Luthor would look like. Perry White looks like Perry White, but also we have somebody in some kind of wintry, kind of Arctic gear. Now, I think that could be Eve Teschmacher there. And I find the choice of clothing really interesting, because I think this could signify that when they were filming the Fortress of Solitude scenes, not only is Superman there, the Engineer is there, but we also probably have Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, and Eve Teschmacher at the Fortress of Solitude for whatever scenes they were filming there. And who knows where that will be in the movie. Maybe it's like in the third act, because obviously they don't shoot movies in order. But you get what I'm saying. I do think that's Eve Teschmacher. It could be somebody like Cat Grant, but I'm thinking it's Eve. We also have some other little previews of wrap gifts here. A Big Belly Burger thing, a lanyard, but we also have a crystal. Now, surprise, surprise, you know, Fortress related, but I have seen a couple of behind the scenes photos of the Fortress of Solitude myself. Some of you may remember me talking about it. What I saw, with no spoilers here, was like a, you know, as if you saw a set. Like, you see some physical aspects to it, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff they'll add in post. But one thing I said I did see is that they're definitely bringing the crystals back to the Fortress of Solitude. You know, there was really big ones, but this one looks more like an actual device crystal that is used and operated within that of the Fortress of Solitude itself, the Kryptonian consoles that will be featured in there. But this isn't the only Superman news that we have, ladies and gentlemen, because just yesterday, we had a comment from Mark Waid, and I'm sure many of you know who Mark Waid is, and he said something about the movie in where it implies that he's heard and definitely knows some things about it, and it's the kind of leak, in my opinion, that is the most natural, organic leak, and where somebody says something that they don't realize that shouldn't really be out there. But here, you have Mark Waid saying, I have a good feeling about this movie. I mean, I like James Gunn. I like his reverential approach by and large to this kind of stuff, and, you know, reverential without taking it too seriously. I mean, the movie has a dog in it, a superpowered dog with heat vision, so you know it's not any Zack Snyder. Now, as for Krypto, this is really just kind of something we already knew, or without confirmation. If you guys remember back in the set photos and video days, we saw Mr. Terrific running down the street after going to a pet store that had been broken into. A little kind of glass break hole as if a dog jumped in it to steal some treats or whatever. And then he was running down the street, signifying to this invisible CGI thing to jump up jump up into the air and kind of fly away, right? And throwing dog treats. So yeah, it's kind of obvious that we're getting Krypto in the film, and it seems that Mark Waid kind of gave that away here in terms of maybe conversations he's had with Gunn himself. Now, one thing that I'm still really interested in knowing is the origin of Krypto in this DCU. Is it going to be the kind of thing where he actually did come from Krypton and Jor-El sent him to Earth ahead of time before Kal-El to just kind of test it out, if you will? I don't know about that. I really like the idea of, if all the theories out there with regards to Lex Luthor using Superman's DNA, whether that's to create Ultraman or whatever the heck he's trying to do, in that you would maybe try, instead of human trials first, you would try that out on a dog. If you guys remember Titans, that's similar to what they did with the creation of Superboy. Before creating a half Lex Luthor, half Superman DNA kind of clone, they tested that out on an animal, a dog, and that was Krypto. I think if truly this movie is going the direction of Lex Luthor using Superman DNA to try and, I don't know, exact some larger plan, that having Krypto introduced in this movie as a byproduct of Kryptonian DNA testing before creating Ultraman or something else, I think that's more of an organic way to do it, because sure, this may be nitpicky, but like, if Krypto came to Earth and has been around this long when Clark was a baby, can you imagine like Jonathan and Martha like encountering a dog that has super strength, can fly, has heat vision? That's just, it's crazy to imagine, on top of a baby that they have to raise who's also Kryptonian. Sure, Krypto could just have been a really good boy, and they didn't have too much trouble with him. But I just find it more of a believable thing in this universe if, when they're investigating Lex Luthor, you know, there's a whole larger plot going on, that they actually find this dog, and Clark ends up taking him in. But let me know what you would prefer. Would you prefer something like that, or would you have actually preferred him to have been sent to Earth and been around since Clark was an actual baby? Up next, let's cover a couple of Gunn threads responses. We haven't done this in a little while, so we have this user asking, are your projects going to shuffle again, like when we thought we would get the Authority before Supergirl? I'm guessing that's why we don't have an update for Waller. We have another user saying, no projects will be greenlit until scripts are done, hence some projects have shuffled around. Some are before than announced, some are later. And Gunn himself says, and most of those weren't announced in some definitive order. The only shuffling done was moving Waller after Peacemaker for a variety of reasons, and yes, unlike most studios, which is, you know, calling out there, to be honest, and I agree with it, will never start production on a process if the script isn't finished. Quality is the utmost priority. And again, I agree with the latter of what he said, because you guys know the climate these days. So many movies get rushed out there, not enough time in pre-production. Scripts aren't almost even done sometimes, and they're doing it along the way, figuring it out. And then, you know, you have like the higher up surprise that is tanking and flopping at the box office. But James Gunn is like, absolutely not. Like, we can't guarantee our movies are going to do great in the box office, but what we can guarantee is that we're going to execute it in the right way. Like, we're going to make sure that quality is the highest priority. And as for what he said earlier, that the projects weren't announced in some definitive order. Now, when it was first announced, I was thinking that was the order, and I think it was, and the way to look at it is that it was a tentative release order, but it wasn't definitive. Like, projects were going to be shuffled around, such as, you know, Waller after Peacemaker when it was originally described as a Peacemaker season 1.5. And so as a result of that, if some, you know, projects that are in active development were closer to completion for the scripts and, you know, green lighting and stuff like that, those would probably happen ahead of time. We also have another user asking, in what year will we finally receive season 2 of Peacemaker? And Gunn confirmed that it's 2025 after Superman. This fits, obviously. They're filming right now. It will be ready after Superman. Absolutely. We have this user asking, is Booster Gold going to appear in Superman? And Gunn said no. This has been a bit of a speculation for some time, because it's fairly obvious at this point that Kumail Nanjiani is going to be Booster Gold, although it's not fully confirmed right now. But he has been hanging out with a lot of the Superman cast, so that led naturally to a lot of people speculating, wait, what if he has a very, very low-key cameo in the movie before that of his own series? But Gunn is definitively saying no here. Moving over to Elseworlds, we can't forget about the Constantine 2 movie with Keanu Reeves. That's been in development for quite a while now. It's not been greenlit, but Gunn, as he said himself, it is still in active development, and we have producer Lorenzo de Bonaventura confirmed that the script is complete for Constantine 2. You know it's in my inbox right now. Funny enough, I'm too scared to read it though. It's unknown if DC Studios will greenlight the project. But you'd have to think that we would hear about it at some point in time, because if the script is complete, and that's been confirmed now, Gunn has to read it and either say, yeah, we're moving forward with this, we're literally greenlighting pre-production, and the Elseworlds movie, the sequel to Constantine, Keanu Reeves' Constantine, is going ahead, or not. Now, I don't know when we could hear about that. I mean, for all we know, it could be the kind of situation where it does move ahead, but until somebody gets asked about it involved in the movie, which could be months from now, we might not hear if it's actually moving ahead, or even if it's been denied. We might not hear for several months, like when there's another interview with somebody involved, they're like, oh yeah, about that. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out. Do you know what I mean? But I would love to know if you would like this to move ahead. I'm game for it because it's Elseworlds. It doesn't mean that we don't get a Constantine in the DCU. And I think any supernatural side of things is several years away, if you know what I mean. You know, we know we're probably getting a Dead Man project. We're getting Swamp Thing, but I don't expect that until sometime well after Brave and the Bold, which is quite a few years away. So anything DCU Constantine, I think, would naturally be quite a few years away as well, possibly towards the very end of Chapter 1, or maybe going into Chapter 2. Now, moving over to the Batverse side of things, there's been a bit of a theory recently, and I get where people are coming from in a way, but I don't know where it goes past the initial stepping stone. Like, what's the next step? So people have been thinking, since we know Oz Cobblepot in the comics is known as Oz Cobb in the Batverse, they changed his name, that maybe he could have a link to the Court of Owls, because one of the Talons in the comics is known as William Cobb. The thing about this is, okay, I get what they're saying, Oz Cobb, William Cobb, but, what, are they going to say that is the next part of this theory that Oz Cobb is going to be a Talon? Or is the idea that he is connected to, some Court of Owls royalty? And since he takes over as Kingpin by the end of the Penguin series, they let him in on the fold, because with the whole Court of Owls theory, Falcone would have been aware of the Court of Owls most likely, since, they control the city and Falcone was the figurehead of controlling the city. So I guess, if Oz Cobb becomes Kingpin, which he obviously will, and if he's related to William Cobb, they're like, William, somebody you're related to happens to be the new Kingpin, let's let him in on the fold. All of it just kind of sounds quite out there for me. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because Craig Zobel, who directs episodes of The Penguin, shoots down Oz Cobb's connection to the Court of Owls in The Penguin. I can't 100% answer that because I don't know everything in Matt Reeves' mind. Largely, we all kind of felt like Cobblepot wasn't a real person's name. The goal was to just find a real rooted, more grounded name. So, again, I wouldn't say 100% shot it down. He just said, I can't 100% answer that, but I don't think he'd really be in the know anyway. And even beyond that, when you look at the theory, I don't, just because he shares a name with William Cobb, what would that mean for Oz in the next step after that? Because when you entertain it, as I did earlier, it's just like, I'm just picturing a Oz Talon now. But, jokes aside, I really don't know about this one. But going more along the line of the Penguin, we have a couple of clips having been released, one between Sophia Falcone and Oz, and also another scene of Oz talking to Johnny Vitti and Milos Grappa at the Falcone residence, which you guys will be seeing this in episode 1 as Sophia Falcone enters the scene. I don't want to play them here just in case of copyright, but you can definitely go check these scenes out yourself if you haven't seen them already for just a little preview of episode 1. But speaking of the Penguin, I'm very glad that it got glowing reviews, because I gave it a very glowing review in my no spoilers review, and at this current point in time it's sitting at 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, say what you will about Rotten Tomatoes, but a lot of the critics are giving it really good reviews. Variety saying Colin Farrell, the Penguin, is a mesmerizing crime drama that moves beyond Batman. But despite many outlets saying things like that, you have IGN giving it a 5. IGN that gives shows like She-Hulk an 8 out of 10. And, there's even other, things like that, which are like 9 or 10 out of 10s, and yet the Penguin's a 5. Now, say what you will about that, but I'm telling you right now, that is bull. Now, speaking of clips, we also have some previews of scenes in Joker 2. Again, I don't think I can play them here, but we see Lee going to visit Arthur in Arkham, saying that she's so proud of him, like he did so well. You should see it out there. They're all going crazy for you. And this is probably when or after he attended court for the first time and has gone back to Arkham, but he'll keep going back to court, obviously, because I think there's going to be quite a few scenes of that before he actually breaks out of the courtroom in that explosion as featured in the trailers. There's also so many little features and little promos, TV spots for Joker coming out, and, well, Joker 2, and I'm really excited for it. I know not everyone is here, but the more I'm seeing here, the more I'm like, this really looks good, and I think it's going to be pretty awesome, even though it might be a bit divisive. But ladies and gentlemen, that is everything I'm going to get into in today's DC Studios News Roundup video. So I would love to know your thoughts on everything and anything that we talked about. My next video will be my Penguin review, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on that. We've got a lot of Batverse nerding out to do. Until next time, I am going to love you and leave you, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Goodbye.